Hi, I'm Jeb Butler, an attorney at the Butler Kahn law firm. We're often asked, what'll happen to my deposition? Or what are depositions like? Or what is a deposition? Today we'll talk about that a little bit. We could go on all day about depositions, and lawyers do that. There are day-long, week-long seminars all about how to take depositions, how to use depositions, and that kind of thing. But I presume you don't want to spend a week listening to me talk. So today, we're just going to hit 3 high points. We'll talk first about who's at a deposition. Second, we'll talk about what kind of questions get asked at a deposition. In other words, what are they going to ask me? And third, we'll talk about how, how long the deposition might last. So we'll begin with that question about who's going to be there, because that's a good way to get acquainted with the idea of a deposition. A deposition is just sworn testimony that's taken outside the courtroom. So in a deposition, you have at least 4 people. We're looking here at a picture taken of a deposition that occurred in person in my office. And in this one, you can see first here the witness. In this case, the witness is our expert accident reconstructionist. We can also see the court reporter over here. The court reporter is the person who will swear in the witness, say, raise your right hand, swear to tell the truth. And then she's also the person who will take down or make stenographic notes of every word that's said while you're on the record in the deposition. And then here we have the questioning lawyer. Since my firm always represents plaintiffs, the questioning lawyer here is the defense lawyer who's taking the deposition of our accident reconstruction expert. And then here is our man in the room, attorney Tom Giannotti. So the questioning lawyer will ask questions of the witness. Usually that takes up most of the time in the deposition. Occasionally after that's done, the defending lawyer here, our man Tom, will have a chance to ask questions. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. And then if the defending lawyer asks questions, then the lawyer who did the initial questioning gets another chance to go again. And that can be passed back and forth, many times. Usually, though, it doesn't happen for very long. So that's who's who in a simpler deposition. Sometimes, however, they get more complicated than that. So you'll recognize in this photo the same conference room. And this is our conference room. This is during the tail end of the pandemic. It was one of the first in-person depositions we did as all that started to wind down a little bit. And here we have a multi-party case. So there's 3 defendants in the case, 2 plaintiffs. So things get more complicated. There's more people in the room. In this one, our witness, who's another expert, is down here. And the court reporter is here. She's talking into a mask. Some court reporters do that and some don't. And then we have a bunch of defense lawyers. Defense lawyer number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. There are only 3 defendants, but some brought multiple lawyers to the deposition. And then we have our man in the room, my partner Matt Kahn, and then co-plaintiff, that is another party that was on our side of this particular case, Nick Protentis. So depositions can be more complicated, but the procedure is the same. The court reporter will swear in the witness, and then the lawyers who are taking the deposition will get a chance to ask questions. Each party or each sort of named defendant or plaintiff gets a turn, and it goes around and around until nobody has any more questions. The 2 pictures we've looked at so far have been in-person depositions. These days, it's not always that way. Sometimes you have depositions via video conference, and that is almost always, at least at this point, by Zoom. So it could be that you'll be staring at a computer in your deposition, and the screen you look at will look something like this. This is actually from a hearing rather than a deposition, but it would look very much the same. You'd have lawyers and the court reporter here in the video. Occasionally, in an in-person deposition, you'll have a videographer. So in addition to the court reporter who writes stenographic word-for-word notes about what happens. You would also have someone there like holding a video camera or with a video camera on a tripod. See how my art skills are here. Taking a video of the proceeding, usually right across the table from the witness. So that is who's who at a deposition, and that'll take us to our next question, which is, what are they going to ask? Well, typically at a deposition, the lawyer taking it starts with a bunch of background information. What's your name? And they'll set out what they claim are the rules for the deposition. And then they might go through address, how you're related to the case. You know, if it's a car wreck, where you live, who owned the car, that kind of thing. If it's a more complex case, it might be your relationship with the company that's involved, basic background stuff. This part, unless I'm the one taking your deposition, this part is likely to last for far longer than you think it should. Most defense lawyers bill by the hour, so they don't have any interest in getting right to the point. So you'll have these long list of questions, and many of them will seem irrelevant because you've got to sit through and answer them. And then you'll finally get to the meat of the deposition, where people ask about what's going on, you know, how the car wreck happened, how the person drowned, if it's that kind of case, how the product failed, if it's that kind of case. You finally get to the meat. Typically, at the end, the lawyer taking the deposition, asking most of the questions, will take a break, say, let's go off the record for a minute and review notes and make sure they hadn't forgotten anything. And then if they hadn't, then they'll come back on the record, say, I have no further questions, and then the other lawyers present, or at least lawyers for the other parties who represented there, have a chance to ask their questions. So in general, the what of a deposition typically goes background information first and then the substance of the case, although it's not always that way. Another question a lot of folks ask is, how long is it going to take? And the answer is, man, I wish I could tell you. If your deposition is being taken by a defense lawyer who gets paid by the hour, they tend to last longer. Not always. There are some defense lawyers who've been doing this a long time and know what they're doing, and they get right to the point and shut it down. But a lot of them take really long depositions. In Georgia, the rule is a deposition can last no longer than 7 hours. So that means actual on-the-record time. It doesn't count breaks. 7 hours is the maximum. Most depositions don't actually last 7 hours, but they can. You know, in a car wreck case, something like 2 to 5 hours is probably more typical. If it's me or another plaintiff's lawyer or a defense lawyer who's good at what they do, it can be shorter. Sometimes they'll get right to the point. Nobody likes giving depositions, but if you have to give one, we hope this video has helped you feel a little bit more prepared. Thanks.